We'll get you back into court in just a moment, but first, here now to discuss defense attorney, former head prosecutor, my friend Bob Bianchi. Always great to have you on, Bob. I've got to make a long question because I think you probably have a lot to say about this particular testimony, and here's why I say that. I feel like part of what the state was doing is taking the sting out of the negative facts that the defense may bring up, and one of them that stood out to me was, number one, the cause of death, the homicidal violence, which is not something we always hear as a description, in my opinion. But secondly, because instead of talking about all the bruises that might indicate that violence, they brought out that decomposition can obscure bruises. What do you make of this testimony?
Well, Judge, I was trying to think when it was coming out, like how I was going to try to explain this to you, other than I think it was disastrous for the prosecutors. I want to try to give you some insights based on my experience as a homicide prosecutor and defense lawyer. And I think you may have heard me say this before in the many years that we've been together commenting on cases, is I look askance at a lot of medical examiners. I think there's a lot of false science, and I think there's a lot of jumping to conclusions and not enough ruling out. In fact, I just literally, on a defense case in a homicide that I've had for 4 years, it was for killing a child, was just dismissed by prosecutors when they had to admit that the forensic pathologist and all of their cadre of doctors missed the diagnosis that actually was natural causes that killed the baby. This happens all the time. And as prosecutors, myself included, when I was doing this, I was very suspicious of jumping to conclusions. Now, this particular expert, I'm going to get past my first thought with you, Judge, which was, it's driving me crazy. She's following that script that every time you answer a question, turn and look to the jury. It's driving me nuts that even when she's saying yes, she's got to turn to the jury. It looks scripted. It's not a good look. It's not a way to communicate. It's unnatural. Now, let's go to what's important, which is the substance of her testimony. She's unable to answer questions, and she's falling back on something that I found to be one of the most perniciously bad things to do when you're a homicide person, which is listen to the investigators. Now, I get that you have to understand the facts of a case, but many times I had arguments with pathologists saying, just because an investigator thinks it's a murder doesn't mean it's a murder. So you should not have taken that into consideration unless the facts they're presenting to you lead you to that conclusion. What facts did we hear here? It was the positional asphyxia. I haven't heard yet, and I'm not satisfied as a curious homicide prosecutor, Judge, that the baby died in that trash bin. We don't know where the baby died, how the baby died, and certainly they didn't do a good job at ruling out all of the other possible causes of death that could occur. And lastly, even on the positional asphyxia, we heard nothing on direct examination about, tell us how that works mechanically with the body. Explain the difference between asphyxia and hypoxia, which is a lack of oxygen from natural causes or potentially an accident. This is no bueno, and if they don't have another expert, which I can't imagine, last point, they may have had to call this expert because legally, this is the person that has to certify cause and manner of death. And they may want to get her on and get her off and then have another expert explain the asphyxia piece, because right now they've created a lot of reasonable doubt. This expert was horrible.
And she has done 3,600 autopsies. That was part of the qualification. So certainly she's very involved in the autopsies there. Let's do this. We're going to put a pin in it. I'm going to circle back to you as we see what unfolds in terms of other witnesses and other. Perfect time to bring back in defense attorney, former head prosecutor Bob Bianchi to discuss. Bob Bianchi, what do you think of this cross-examination?
I'm like a lion in a cage. I've been like for 20 minutes, like, please stop the bleeding. Look, this is an insult, okay? I want to tell your viewers, this is an insult. Well, I've tried a lot of hard cases. That's not the point. This is sloppy. The lawyer's doing an amazing job, but he's got a great witness to do an amazing job with. All she is saying, she's admitting she has no medical basis to come to this conclusion. The medical examiner has to convince 12 people beyond a reasonable doubt that the cause and manner of death is X and it's homicide. It's not an accident, it's not a medical event. She can't do it. And she keeps going back to the refrain, well, the other circumstances. This is very dangerous. This is how innocent people get convicted of things that they did not do. This sloppy logic with just going along with whatever it is the cops say. He's bringing out alternative theories that she either didn't look into or doesn't remember. And Judge, I can go on, but this one really killed me. And it was like the conclusion. It was the finale. Actually, I got 2 points. One, he asked a forensic pathologist. The reason forensic is before the word pathologist is that she's got knowledge of medical cause of death and she's an expert in the law. She can't define abuse.
And she's a doctor. Let's keep that in mind. She's a doctor. To be a forensic pathologist, you're a doctor. Go ahead, Bob.
Exactly. She can't define what abuse is. I mean, that is disingenuous. It is a lie. It is complete malfeasance. Last point is for the trial aficionados out there, both lawyers and non-lawyers. This defense lawyer faced a very critical thing. I could see it happening because I've been there. He was getting so much good information. She led up on a couple of occasions that she can't base this opinion on medicine, which may lead to him making a motion to dismiss the case because that can't be proven beyond a reasonable doubt based on this testimony. Probably will lose, but it's a motion he's going to make. Here's the practice point. When do you get out of a cross-examination?
Yeah.
He probably had another hour of questions to ask, but it got so unbelievably good for him. You could see he was literally thinking in his head, should I just walk? And I was saying, if your producers were listening, that's it. And
sit down.
Stop after he got the abuse, and that's exactly what he did.
And Bob, that's what I thought too. I'm like, sit down, sit down. This is a perfect time to sit down. He's doing a very good job. I'm not sure the witness was prepped. All right, thank you to Bob Bianchi for joining us tonight.